The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. Once again, this is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic. And we were talking with James Rose, who is a juvenile attorney in Nashville, as well as a keynote speaker. We were talking about the size of the juvenile justice system in the county surrounding Nashville, and I was quite surprised to learn that there is only one juvenile judge for the entire county surrounding Nashville. Now we will continue the conversation. Maybe it's my big city view, but we have more magistrates and judges in one of the 6 court buildings in Cook County than you have in your entire county. So, it's the largest.
Chicago is one of the largest cities in the nation. Tennessee Nashville is certainly not small, but certainly not anywhere near as large as Chicago,
right.
New York, Los Angeles, the mega cities of our nation.
Right. So this might sound unrelated, but you started the conversation by saying that you have done some work in entertainment law. Can you touch on that? What have you done in the entertainment business?
I started out in entertainment law, and I networked a lot and had some success. It didn't turn out to be financially profitable for me, so hence the transition to juvenile law. But probably my biggest claim to fame, so to speak, was representing trademark applicants for some of the honky-tonk bars here in Nashville. I've done some work for entertainers, but most of them you have not heard of. They might have been associated with somebody if you're a big country music fan you might have heard of. But I started out in entertainment law because I love music and I wanted to help out musicians and artists.
So we're both keynote speakers. What are some of the speaking opportunities that you would love to participate in?
I think I could benefit schools, education conferences. I have even spoken at a church, so I wouldn't rule that out either. But I believe in the school setting for an assembly or as a breakout speaker or keynote speaker in a conference of educators. Also contemplating professionals, but right now my focus is on educators, and it's on school speaking possibilities.
So you said assembly. Would you be speaking to students as well as staff?
I have spoken to students. In fact, this past February, I went to my alma mater and spoke mostly to the students. Faculty were invited, but I spoke mostly to the students. I would limit my students. I think my presentation is appropriate for high school students, but not anyone any younger. I think middle school faculty or high school faculty would definitely be the key beneficiaries of my presentation.
What final thoughts can you share about your background, your services, your contact information, your website, all of that good stuff? What final thoughts can you share?
I have 18 years of experience in juvenile law, and that inspired me to get on this trail of developing my presentation. My presentation changes, is tailored to fit various audiences, and I try to look into, when I speak to a certain audience, I try to put in different blocks of content that I think would benefit that audience. It's kind of like fingerprints. But my website is jamesrosespeaker, all one word, .com. And if you go there, you can get in touch with me very easily, very accessible. And I would love to hear from anyone.
Terrific, James. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to our listeners and educate them about the juvenile justice system, which a lot of people don't know about. I realize this was high level, but I really want to express my appreciation to you. Thank you.
My appreciation to you, too. I really appreciate it, Marcus. And thank you all for the people who listen as well.
I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So, if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. That is STRESS2logic.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, that was James Rose. You can find him at jamesrosespeaker.com. It was very enlightening for me to hear about the juvenile justice system, and I hope it was enlightening for you as well. Today being Mother's Day, I'd like to share a story about my mother. My mother passed away in 2005, actually on New Year's Day, 2005. But I want to take that back to several years, mid-1990s. My father had passed away, and we were in a neighborhood with some nefarious individuals. My father was the protector of the family. At the time, I was 19 years old, and kind of fell on me, but I took my mother and my sister to the shooting range. Now, I mentioned earlier in the show that I'm Jewish, so was my mother, and if I could describe her to you, she was a little old Jewish lady who was a school librarian. Now, whatever comes to mind, with the exception of the beehive hairdo from the 1960s, probably fit my mother. Way back when I took her and my sister to Bell's shooting range, which used to be in Franklin Park on Manheim Road, that was one of my go-tos. I set up my mom with a .22 in a booth, did the whole safety briefing with her. I go into the next booth to shoot at my target, and this is what I heard. Boom, oi! Boom, oi! Boom, oi! For an hour and a half. Now, at 19 years old, I was quite embarrassed. Makes a great story for today, but her expressions of, quote, oi, end quote, were louder than the gunshots. I immediately drop everything. I run back over. Are you okay, Mom? And she, keeping the gun pointed downrange, she listened. She turned her head and she said, I'm perfectly fine, and continued to shoot. And for an hour and a half, that is what I heard. Boom, oi. So it's one way for me to repeat the story, keep my mother's memory alive. Hopefully some of you guys are laughing. With that said, I want to talk about firearms. There's some interesting news articles. This first one was published May 7th, so this week. And in Nashville, Tennessee, this article came out of Nashville, Tennessee for NPR, and don't judge, I got it from NPR. In March of 2023, there was an assailant who shot and killed 3 students and 3 staff members at Covenant School, which was a private Christian elementary school in Nashville. The shooting prompted calls for gun safety legislation. And as you heard in the beginning of the show, Tennessee is a very 2A friendly state. And thousands of people protested outside of the Capitol, calling for universal background checks, safe gun storage laws, and accountability for the gun industry. So at the time, it seemed like there was bipartisan support for some sort of gun control bill. But Republican Governor Bill Lee urged lawmakers to pass a red flag law, a measure that would temporarily confiscate guns from people deemed to be a danger to themselves or others, which is great in theory, but in practice. But the bill was never taken up in 2023, and during the recently concluded 2024 session, the Republican-led legislature passed bills expanding gun access instead of restricting it. The most controversial of the laws is one allowing teachers to carry a concealed firearm in school after training and approval. This is similar to Texas. Supporters of the measure argued by saying it will make schools safer by allowing teachers to, quote, deter, end quote, shooters. But there's little evidence to show that the policy makes schools safer. And several Tennessee school districts have already announced that they won't allow teachers to carry guns. Under the new law, a local principal, education commissioner, and sheriff must approve before a teacher can carry a firearm in a school. They'd have to go through a 40-hour training class, pass a psych eval, submit fingerprints, and get a handgun permit in order to carry a weapon. Republican State Rep Ryan Williams, the bill's sponsor, says armed teachers can make schools safer. During a floor debate, he said if school shooters encounter armed teachers, they might end up going somewhere else because they're deterred. Tennessee joins more than 2/3 of all U.S. states in allowing concealed carry by teachers with some training and approval, but school safety experts say the measure won't make classrooms safer. Ken Trump, who's the president of the National School Safety and Security Services, says the training and precautions don't go far enough. There's a lot more that goes into public safety function than simply training someone to shoot, clean, and holster a gun and some marginal training around that. Elisa Mula, a security consultant and founder of Moms in Security, says educators shouldn't be asked to multitask as teachers and security officers. She said, I think the best thing to do if you're going to introduce any weapons into the school is to properly do it with security professionals that are designated only to handle emergency response. This new law doesn't require schools to inform parents or other educators if a teacher is armed. Democratic State Senator Ramesh Akbari worries about people not knowing who has a gun in the school. You will have no idea whether the gun is there or not, who has it or not, said Akbari. I mean, it's just too many unknowns that promote a lack of safety as opposed to safety. The bill allows teachers to carry concealed firearms, and it came up during a 2023 session also, but it was delayed after lawmakers refused to pass any gun legislation in the immediate aftermath of the Covenant school shooting. I'm going to opine here. I think that's a great idea because acting on emotion, and this is what I speak about in my public speaking, acting on emotion usually does not come out with a great outcome. You want to make sure that emotion dissipates and we make logical decisions. Ahead of this year's vote, nearly 200 high school students in Nashville walked out to protest at the state capitol. High school senior Ella Brynan said expanding where guns can be carried won't make schools safer. We don't want guns in school. Guns are the problem. They do not belong here. Students belong here, she said. Democratic State Rep Justin Pearson said arming teachers doesn't get at what he believes is the real issue. Each and every one of us will be responsible and accountable for the gun violence that will happen due to this pathetic excuse for dealing with the gun violence epidemic, he said. So right there, gun violence and epidemic, those are buzzwords. We're using buzzwords. I'll give you my opinion in a little bit. During this year's session, lawmakers also passed a bill requiring schools to teach kids about firearms for safety that got bipartisan support. With nearly half of Tennessee households owning at least one gun, Republican State Rep Chris Todd said kids should know how to be safe around them. By the time they turn 18, they probably are going to see a firearm, and we want to make sure that they know exactly what to do. But for Democratic State Senator Heidi Campbell, the legislature missed an opportunity to pass more expansive gun safety bills. We're not addressing the actual problem, and I'm just going to say it's the guns. Tennessee lawmakers will be back next year and will likely consider gun bills that didn't make it past the finish line this year, including one to prevent businesses from prohibited firearms on their property. Another would allow long guns to be carried openly. So let's break down this article. And my family has a ton of educators in it. And as an educator myself, although I'm currently not a school teacher, I still consider myself an educator, and I did work in the school system. I really do not think teachers should be armed. What? Marcus, you're a gun guy. Oh my goodness. How can you say that? I think there should be, and I've said this my entire career. I think that there should be an element of armed security in the schools. And if the schools do not want to advertise that they're armed security or create panic, guess what? Have the custodial staff, many of whom are blue collar, many of whom I've actually trained some school non-teacher people in my classes. Those are the people that should be carrying concealed weapons, because really, I mean, you're a janitor, you can drop a mop, you can stop taking out the garbage. You can stop cleaning. You can stop doing all that other stuff to address a threat. Whereas a teacher cannot really stop supervising children in his or her classroom to deal with a threat. Once that teacher deals with the threat, nobody is supervising those kids, nobody is protecting those kids, and nobody is leading those kids, particularly in the younger ages. So while I strongly believe that there should be an armed response in each and every school, I also strongly believe it should not fall to the teachers because their attention is going to be divided. A couple of the things that I teach in class is one of the rules I established is you can't have a cell phone in one hand and a gun in the other. And the whole premise behind that is it is too distracting. I actually just submitted an article on it. We'll see if it gets published, where I say, unless the cell phone is related to the actual firearm activity, it shouldn't even be out. And this is what I mean. But I've seen people in the range, particularly younger generations, millennials, Gen Z, etc., take out their cell phones and they want to snap a video for Snapchat. They want to take pictures, and they're doing selfies with a gun in one hand and the camera phone in the other. This is dangerous. It is too distracting. Similarly, in a school, if you have a teacher who's dealing with children having a firearm, the children are also distracted. How are you going to calm the children when you are engaging a threat, when there could be another person in the school, i.e. janitorial staff, who could counter the threat? So I agree with some of the people in the article that 40 hours of training on how to handle a firearm is really not enough. It would have to be how to handle a firearm in a classroom full of panicking children. That's the training that's needed. Additionally, there's training that's needed without a firearm on how to deal with panicking children in the classroom. One of the things that I teach is managing agitated people. Another topic that I teach, which would be great for school districts, is called Overcoming the Hot Stress Mess, which is exactly the same title as my book, Overcoming the Hot Stress Mess, which is available at www.theoppositeofsafe.com. Now, theoppositeofsafe.com is about mass violence, and that's the website that I chose. It's also the title of another book that I wrote, and at the time when I established the website, that was the name of the book, so I made it the name of the website. A little bit short-sighted, but the reality is that's where you can get my book on how to overcome the blockers that happen when you are in a stressful situation. And these blockers are things like cognitive blocks, memory blocks, tunnel vision, auditory exclusion. All of these things are discussed and how to snap back your brain into the moment. Now, if you're upset and you use these techniques, and I found this out because I use them myself, it's not going to change the fact that you're upset. It's not going to give you a sense of calm like a narcotic would, or like marijuana would, or cannabis, but it's going to snap you out of an emotional response back into a rational response. So how does this all work? Well, I'm glad you asked. In the brain, we've got different parts of our brain. We've got the amygdala, which is just above the brainstem. The amygdala is our emotional control center. It also has to do with adrenaline and cortisol and a ton of other hormones. And then we have the prefrontal cortex, which is just behind everyone's forehead. At least we hope it is. That was a joke. And behind the forehead is the prefrontal cortex, which controls our rational thought. When we are upset or in an emotional state of mind, more blood goes to the amygdala, less blood goes to the prefrontal cortex. So we react on instinct or on emotion instead of on cognitive processes. I'll give you an example. Pedestrians in the middle of the street, cars barreling down on them, they jump out of the way. Their emotional center of their brain sprung them into action, activated their muscles, released adrenaline, released cortisol, released norepinephrine, all these hormonals that go into the bloodstream to make someone act. And that's how a lot of people get incredible strength during incidents that are very, very stressful and straining. Now, the person has jumped out of the way. They're on the side of the street. They're panting heavily. They've avoided danger. And now, a couple seconds later, 6, 8, 10, 12 seconds later, their prefrontal cortex cognitive functions come back, and they will realize the color of the car, the speed of the car, the license plate. But jumping out of the way, those factors, those pieces of data have nothing to do with survival. So the survival mechanism is activated. The person jumps out of the way, then they can notate details about the car. What was the light? Was it red? Was it green? Did they go through a red light? Another example so that's kind of an academic example, but let me give you a practical one. Have you ever been in an argument with someone and later on either thought of the perfect thing to say or regretted something that you said? And the answer is yes, we've all experienced that. That is a common human experience. Here's what's happening. In the argument, you are upset. And when you are upset, again, your amygdala activate and your prefrontal cortex is reduced in capacity. Later on, you've calmed down, everything's cool, your head is cool, and you think of, oh, I should have said X, Y, Z. Or sometimes that even happens when you're in a great situation, you're at a party, you're excited to be there. We'll have people, actually, when this is broadcasting, my family will be at my house. It's a very happy thing. And then later on, this is what happens to me. I think of the perfect thing I should have said that would have been hilarious or funny at the time. But I don't think about it because I'm in an adrenaline dump. I'm very, very happy. Remember, stress is not always negative. There's something called eustress, which is positive. And we experience positive stress when we do things like have a baby, visit someone with a baby, go on a roller coaster, go bungee jumping, any high-risk activities. I get that high when I go to the shooting range, but I'm able to kind of corral it so that I can make conscious decisions about safety. But this happens to absolutely everyone. And so it's very interesting, and it's very important for our listeners to be able to control themselves, control their emotions when they're in an emotional state of mind. And one of my rules is, and the way it was said to me was, you never handle a gun in anger. But I've expanded that. Those were my father's words to me. My new rule is you never handle a firearm if you're in an emotional state of mind, and that is both positive and negative. Just to give you an example, last summer I was about to go into my garage and maintain some of my firearms, and something happened. I have no idea. I don't even remember what happened. That's how important it was. But I was upset by it. And because I was upset by it, I said to myself, ooh, today is not a good day for me to handle firearms. So I didn't. I did not handle firearms. I waited until the next day, and then I went that was a Saturday, Sunday, went into the garage and did my chore at that time. So having the wherewithal to know if you are in the correct state of mind is extremely critical. Now, is it okay in some situations to have a firearm in one hand and be emotional? Absolutely. And that answer is, or that scenario is, when you're being attacked by a dirtbag. Is it okay to get upset at the bad guy who's trying to take your life or put you in the hospital or put your family in the hospital? Absolutely. It is absolutely okay to be mad at the person who's broken into your home and threatened your family. Just like a couple episodes ago, we talked about the Maniscalco family in Arlington Heights, where they had a home invasion and the husband actually shot and killed the offender. And it's okay to be upset at the offender. But you also have to control yourself. One of the firearm classes I went to, maybe a decade ago, talked about you're going to be mad at the offender, which is perfectly normal. But don't be so mad at the offender that after you've shot them and they're on the ground, you're so mad at them that you go up to them and you kick them, because someone's going to be recording you. So again, you have to rein in your emotions. Again, going back to the cell phone in one hand and a gun in the other, again, it is okay to have a cell phone in one hand and a firearm in the other if you're calling 911 for help. And if you are, remember, you want to request law enforcement and 2 ambulances, one for you, one for the offender. The reason why you want one for the offender is because you shoot to stop. You do not shoot to kill. You do not shoot to wound. If you use those words, that can be used against you. That will be used against you in court to show intent. But if you call an ambulance for the offender and you say, I just wanted to stop the attack, like Kyle Rittenhouse did in his trial, if you go back and listen to it, and I didn't hear the whole thing, but I listened to parts of his testimony, and he kept saying, I just wanted to stop the attack over and over. Now, witnesses, when you get on the stand, you are prepped by an attorney. Don't think that you're not. They will tell you what to say, believe it or not, or how to frame things so that you don't incriminate yourself on the stand. And Kyle took the stand. And whatever you feel about Kyle doesn't matter. I'm talking about the words he used during his testimony, which were, I shot to stop the attack, over and over and over again. And should you render aid to someone you have just shot or defended against? The answer is no. I don't care if you're a physician. I don't care if you're an EMT, a paramedic. Do not treat the patient medically. The reason why is if the offender passes away or dies, it could be a liability to you because you treated them, and what are they going to say in a court? What are they going to claim? That you finished their job. Even though you're packing the wound, you're doing quick clot, you have a tourniquet, you're trying to save the person, it's going to be twisted around and you will be held liable. I hope this information was very helpful to you. Please tune in next week for another exciting episode of the Personal Safety Show.
We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.